Hello everyone. A request was made to create a short video showcasing how to create extruded 3D images out of 2D images that we import into After Effects from programs such as Illustrator or Photoshop. So let's get started. To do this, I went ahead and did a quick web search and I found this. I picked a logo, in this case the YouTube logo, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this red screen with the white arrow into a 3D object in After Effects. Now, it won't be a true 3D object. It's what we call a 2.5D object. And that is that it will behave as a 3D object as long as it is within the motion graphics environment. But once, if you were to try to export this into a 3D environment, you will not be able to do so. So it's not a true 3D object. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and right click this and copy it. And I'm going to send it into Illustrator. In Illustrator, I have prepped a canvas that is 1280 by 720. It's nothing magical, basically just straight out what the program gives me. I'm going to paste that logo into that area. Now, that image, as you can see, is black on this area, and that's because this is a PNG file that I imported from the web. And when there's transparency on files coming in from the web into a program like Illustrator, it does translate it into a black background. And that's okay because I'm not concerned about losing the YouTube type. I just want to maintain this logo type, this actual vector file, this image. Now, right now it's not a vector file, it is a PNG file. And so I need to trace it to turn it into a vector file. To do so, I'm going to go up to the top with the file selected on the canvas. I am going to go up to the top and I'm going to go to the drop down for image trace. Now under image trace, what I'm going to choose is 3 colors because I really just want black, red, and white to be the final colors for this. And it's going to warn me the more colors you have, the slower this process is going to go. Same thing with the amount of details that you have. The more details, the longer this is going to take. So I'll click OK and the process goes through fairly fast. It will turn everything into, it will retrace everything basically. And with that retrace file, what I'm going to do is once it's done, it's going to tell me it's completed, it's done, and it gives me the opportunity to expand. So I'm going to go ahead and click expand, and you'll notice that it turns everything into vector files. You actually can see the paths with the anchor points. So with that done, what I'm going to do is I am going to zoom out, and I am going to select the black area with the white arrow tool only. With the white arrow, I'll click on the black area and I'll hit delete. And now that background is gone. Then I'll select these 2 files, the 2 items that I have here, and you'll notice that if I go to outlines, they're actual outlines, they're no longer an image. And I am going to separate them, where I'll keep the red one in one layer and the white one in another layer. So I'll go ahead and select the white area. With the white arrow, I'll select inside the white area, and I'll cut it, Control X or Command X on the Mac. Then I'll go to my layers window, and I'll create a new layer and I'll paste in front. So that's Command F or Control F on the PC. Now that has separated both items into their respective layers. And with that, I'm not going to rename these, although I should, but for our purposes, it's only 2 layers, so we should be able to figure out what's what once we're in After Effects. So with this done, I am going to go ahead and save this as an Illustrator file, and I'll call it YouTube box. And I'm going to save it as an Illustrator file, no magic there. It's done. Then I'm going to skip over to After Effects. And in After Effects, I am going to import that file as a composition retaining layer sizes. Now, it really doesn't matter if you retain layer sizes or not, because what we're about to do in After Effects is retrace that artwork. So, if you retrace it, whether you have one layer that the size of the layer is exact to the artwork or it expands the canvas size, it really doesn't matter because once it's retraced, it will be an object that is the size of whatever has been retraced. So in this case, I'm going to import that file. I'm going to change it to composition, retain layer sizes, and then I'll click OK. And then you'll notice that I have the new composition with the name YouTube box and the folder with the 2 layers. So with that composition, I'm going to double click it to open it. You'll notice that I have 2 separate layers, each containing the different pieces of artwork, and they are Illustrator layers. They're recognized as vector layers, but they are not truly an item that I can work with within this environment yet to extrude. So what I want to do is I want to turn those 2 layers into 3D layers. To do so, you go to your switches area and then look for the little box, for the 3D box icon. And then when you click on that, both items turn into 3D layers. Now what that does for you is it activates in the program the rendering engine for 3D. And by default, you will get the classic 3D rendering engine. So basically this is where you would be. Now what I need you to do is I need you to click on that icon, on that button at the top, on the upper right hand corner of the composition window. And from the renderer drop down, I want you to choose Ray Trace 3D. Now this gives you certain abilities with the 3D layers that you're working with, but it also removes some other abilities that you had when they were not 3D with this specific renderer, not with the 3D, with this specific renderer. So if you choose the Ray Trace 3D, you gain some things, but you lose some others. So you have a quid pro quo, and you need to weight, basically weight your what you're gaining versus what you're losing. And it tells you right out what it is that you will be losing versus what you will be gaining. In our case, we need the ability to extrude and bevel our layers. So to do so, that is exactly what I'm going for. So this is the gain for me. I really don't care about what I'm losing on the other side. So what I'm going to say is click OK. You'll notice that now the renderer is Ray Traced 3D, and the layers basically become 3D. They still remain as 3D layers. Now this is, so far, it's all I need, but I cannot really extrude these layers because they are not objects within the environment. To do so, I have 2 options. I can select one of the layers, right click it, and go to the Create drop down under the flyout menu, and then create shapes from vector layer. Now you'll notice that the layer that I had selected lost its visibility, but there's a new layer in its place that contains the exact same object, just retraced. And if you notice the shape, that this little icon, it tells you that it is a shape. It's no longer an Illustrator file, it's a shape. So it now belongs inside the environment. It belongs into the AE environment. The other option to get access to that menu is to click on the layer that you want to retrace, then go to Layer, Create, drop down, Create Shapes from Vector Layer. So basically 2 points of access for the exact same thing. And you'll notice that it turned off the visibility for that other layer, and it created a new version of it. You'll notice the artwork hasn't changed at all. The artwork is the same. So these 2 basically become useless to us right now. We don't need them, so I can go ahead and hide them for now. And I'll work with these 2. Now these, for them to work in tandem, to be able to extrude one based on the extrusion of the other, they need to be parented. So I am going to make the arrow a child of the one below it, of the outlines. And with that done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand, let's say, this one, the layer 1 outlines, and under geometry options, this is the menu that appears once you turn your renderer into Ray Trace 3D. If you keep it as classic 3D, you do not have access to this geometry options menu. Underneath that geometry options menu, you see that you have an extrusion depth. So let me change that to about, say, 40 pixels. And that is, the more complicated or complex, the more complex of an image that you have on the composition, the longer that is going to take to render. So keep that in mind. With that done, I am going to create a camera. I'm going to place me a camera, a 2-node camera, into the composition. Then I'm going to turn that, I'm going to orbit around the object. And as you can see, I am getting extrusion. Now, I don't see the extrusion on this because in reality, the light is even. I don't have a light. I have a universal light, almost like an ambient light in the environment that is basically giving me the exact same amount of light in all directions. To change that, I'm going to create an omni light, a spotlight. Actually, let me create a point light, and that will be a little easier to manipulate. And then I'll click OK. You'll notice that right away I get some changes. Let me switch my view from my active camera to my top view, and I am going to move this light to the side of my geometry, somewhere around here. And let me switch back to my active camera view, and you'll notice that when I rotate, I should start seeing the 3D extrusions that I created. Now let me bring that light a little bit more into view. Let me change that to the top view again. To change the position of that light. Let me just bring it out this way. Might give me a better view. There you go. And so with this, I can go ahead and start moving around to change the depth by which I am illuminating this. Let me bring it out this way. There you go. So I'm a bit far off. Let me actually come out and see if I can get better. Actually undo those two last steps and bring that light again to the front, down a little bit on the x-axis. There you go. And so you can see that there's some extrusion in there happening. Now, depending on the position of the light, you're going to get different amounts of, shadow and highlight. But as you can see, there's quite an extrusion. Now, if you want the other one, the child, to be extruded even more, you can go revisit that specific layer on its own. Since it's a child, it behaves on its own, and then you can increase the extrusion of that to, let's say, 60, and you actually can change its position on the z-axis, and you should be able to get more of what you might be looking for in terms of extrusion. So now this basically is the actual artwork turned into a 3D object that you can manipulate in 3D, in 2.5D, sorry, in the motion graphics environment. I hope this helps.